The HOA queen bee shoved the new neighbor, and the whole pool went dead silent. One slip of a sleeve, one military tattoo, and every roomer in our cul-de-sac died on the spot. You want to know how a Saturday splash turned into a reckoning? Watch closely, because this is where a bully meets a wall she can't push through. It started with sunshine, sunscreen, and a clipboard. The community pool was packed, kids cannonballing, dads pretending to grill like it was the Super Bowl, the speaker looping the same pop song until everyone knew the chorus by muscle memory. At the check-in desk stood Karen Whitfield, head of the compliance committee, in that stiff linen blazer no one asked her to wear in 90-degree heat. The blazer was her crown. The clipboard was her scepter. Every rule in our HOA lived on those pages, and if she ever ran out of ink, she'd use your patience instead. Sarah Miller showed up alone with a canvas tote and a paperback. New to the neighborhood, 2 months tops. She chose a chair in the shade and kept her long sleeves on, even though everyone else was roasting. People noticed because people always do and then pretended they hadn't. Her scars were mostly hidden, but something about the way she moved made you look twice. Not a flinch, not a twitch. Controlled. Precise. She scanned without staring, clocking exits, lifeguards, the location of the AED on the wall. That's not paranoia. That's training. Michael Kelly had been at the far end under a big umbrella since early morning, nursing a thermos coffee and the kind of quiet that makes you think he's reading when he's really taking inventory of a room. He's the neighbor folks describe as nice but private, the guy who always helps carry an elderly resident's groceries but never stays for chit-chat. He saw Sarah step in, and his posture changed just enough to matter chin up half an inch, shoulders square, eyes sharpening like he was switching from movie mode to live feed. He'd seen that scan before. 18 years in the rear view doesn't erase certain instincts. Karen clocked the sleeves within 30 seconds and beelined over. "Hi there," she chirped, the kind of sweet that's all aftertaste. Pool dress code. Sleeves can't cover elbows in water for safety and hygiene. Also, visible marks that might upset children. Sarah didn't look up from her book. "I'm not getting in the water." Karen's smile widened the way doors do when you're about to be escorted out. Even so, we like to maintain a family-friendly aesthetic. Loose fabric looks untidy on deck chairs. You understand. Michael watched Sarah close the paperback with 2 careful fingers, place it in her tote, and set the tote beneath her chair. No sigh, no eye roll, just a quiet reset. "Is this written anywhere?" she asked. Calm. Flat. Dangerous only if you've ever underestimated a quiet voice. Karen raised the clipboard like proof of a crime. Page 3, Section 6, Subsection C. No garments that may drip dye, snag on equipment, or cause discomfort to other residents. Plus, tattoos of a graphic nature. Not a tattoo policy, Sarah said, standing. She had a foot on Karen in height and a lifetime in steadiness. A weaponized taste policy. Someone coughed laughter. Someone else shushed him. Kids kept splashing, but the air changed. You know that moment when a party senses a storm, even if the sky is still blue? That. Karen leaned in, the smile thinned to the shape of a blade. "I'm trying to be kind," she said, which always means a punishment is coming. "We've had concerns, parents, complaints. If you insist on wearing sleeves and drawing attention, we'll have to issue a compliance warning." "Write it," Sarah said, and sat back down. The clipboard hovered. Karen didn't expect resistance, she expected compliance. That's the thing about petty power, it gets flabby when no one pushes back. "Name and address," she said, pen poised. Sarah watched her for one quiet beat, then another. "You already have both," she said. "You had to approve my pool card." That's when the entourage arrived. Every HOA monarch has a court. 2 committee friends with identical sunglasses, a retiree who considers gossip a public service, a young dad eager to look useful in front of authority. They formed a polite semicircle like an audience waiting for a show. "We really don't want to escalate," one of the friends added, which is exactly what people say when they're dying to escalate. "Kids are asking questions." Then give them good answers, Sarah said. Michael set his coffee down. The old thermos thunk against the table. He'd heard voices like Karen's before on other continents, official, performative, convinced that a rulebook justifies humiliation. He saw Sarah's wrists under the cuff, shiny in patches, more map than skin, and his throat went dry. He reached for his wallet without thinking, checking an old, softened photo he kept tucked behind a credit card. 4 faces in dust-colored uniforms. A unit patch. A timestamp burned into memory. July 2006. You don't carry a picture for 18 years unless it has more than ink in it. Karen switched tactics. Cheerful tyranny can pivot to pity in a blink. Look, she said, voice softening like warm butter. If you're in recovery, there are resources. We can connect you with counseling. But this is a family space. Some of the little ones are frightened when they see... See what? Sarah asked. The friend answered for her. Scars. The word hung there like a stink. Conversations hiccuped around the deck. Even the lifeguard glanced down, a teenager suddenly very awake. Scars don't make a space unsafe, Sarah said. Small minds do. A couple of heads bobbed in hesitant agreement. Karen's smile vanished. Fine, she said, flipping a page with more force than necessary. First violation is $250. If unpaid, your amenities privileges will be suspended. If you're going to make this adversarial, we can loop in the management company and the board. You already have, Michael said under his breath. Too quiet for anyone but the umbrella to hear. Karen stepped closer into Sarah's shade. Last chance, she whispered, but the whisper carried. Roll your sleeves to the elbow or I revoke your card. Right now. No, Sarah said. Karen reached for the tote. Then we'll hold your card until you're compliant. The move was fast, deliberate, an adult taking a toy from a toddler, but Sarah's hand got there first. She didn't grab, she redirected, turned the bag inward, a neat little pivot like she could have done it blind, completely ordinary unless you know what it takes to stay gentle under pressure. The crowd oohed the way they do when the underdog returns a serve. Karen flushed. Assault, she snapped, loud enough for the echo. Did you see that? She grabbed me. You reached into my property, Sarah said, still even. Don't. Karen made a show of stepping back, one hand to her chest as if catching breath. I don't feel safe, she announced to the deck at large. Michael stood. No theatrics, no hero stride. He just stood, and it changed the room. Because sometimes the difference between a mob and a crowd is one person deciding to be visible. Karen noticed him now, recalculating the battlefield. Sir, she said, deciding to be polite to a potential witness, please return to your seat. This is a committee matter. Michael didn't move. Is there a posted policy against long sleeves? He asked. Against disruptive attire, Karen said. Back to the script. Against upsetting imagery. Against her, Michael said, and the truth of it made a couple of people look at their feet. Karen's smile returned, brittle but present. If you're her friend, encourage compliance. We want to be compassionate, but we can't make exceptions for people who bring drama. Sarah exhaled through her nose, the tiniest release. She'd swallowed worse than this, you could tell. She wasn't going to run, she wasn't going to beg, she was going to stand and let the rulebook bruise itself against her dignity. That's a choice too. Then came the moment that cracks a neighborhood open. Karen reached out not for the tote this time, not for the card, but for Sarah's sleeve. Just 2 fingers, almost dainty, a tug like a mom fixing a cuff on picture day. We just need to see if there's anything inappropriate underneath, she said. Michael's jaw clenched. Don't, he said, across the deck, but it was already in motion. Sarah stepped back to break contact. Karen shifted forward to keep it. Their feet clipped the leg of the check-in table. The stacked guest waivers slid. A plastic pitcher of wristbands tipped. In that tiny seesaw of bodies and objects and bad choices, fabric lost the fight. The cuff dragged up, snagged on the edge of the clipboard, and a sleeve that had stayed put all summer betrayed its owner at the worst possible second. It wasn't the scars that stunned the crowd. Scars can be stories or stereotypes depending on who tells them. It was the ink inside the scars, clean, simple, unmistakable. A blue-white diamond, crossed rifles, the words curved like a banner beneath. 3rd Infantry Division Ramadi, 2006. Not a Pinterest tattoo, not a bar dare, a unit mark. A year that means something if you were paying attention when most people weren't. The deck noise didn't fade. It broke. Empty sound, like air leaving a tire. The lifeguard forgot his whistle. The kids at the shallow end stopped splashing without being asked. The retiree with the gossip habit stopped recording mid-swipe and lowered his phone slowly, like a flag. Karen blinked at the tattoo the way you stare at a language you don't speak but pretend to. "That's fake," she said, because she couldn't think of anything else, and some people would rather risk a lie than sit in silence with the truth. Sarah didn't yank the sleeve back down. She didn't explain. She didn't perform. She just held her arm where it had landed, visible, undeniable, and looked at Karen as if she were seeing her clearly for the first time. Not a queen, not a monster. Just a person whose power hinged on other people's fear of her. Michael wasn't breathing. Not really. He'd stopped somewhere between the word Ramadi and the shape of that diamond. The photo in his wallet burned like a hot coin. He'd spent years chasing shadows across hospital wards, reunions, message boards, until the trail grew cold and he convinced himself ghosts don't pick up the phone. And here she was in a lounge chair with a paperback and a canvas tote and a patience that could bend metal. He took one step forward, then two, not rushing, not dramatic, like a man crossing a street he isn't sure is safe. He didn't call her name. He hadn't earned that yet. He didn't flash the picture. That would come later or never. He just moved into the space where cowardice usually sits and didn't give it back. Karen found her voice again, the brittle kind that cuts you on the way out. "Stolen valor is a crime," she said to the deck, to the phones, to anyone who would give her the rope she needed to pull herself out of the hole she'd dug. "We'll verify that. We'll call the board. We'll call the police if we have to." No one answered her. The crowd had shifted in a way you can't measure with decibels. It's not louder. It's heavier. Someone at the grill turned the burners off. Someone else whispered, "My brother served." And that single past tense verb did more to set the tone than any rulebook ever could. Sarah finally spoke. Not to Karen. Not to Michael. Not to the chorus of neighbors holding their breath. "You don't get to touch me," she said. And the sentence landed like a door closing. It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was something better final. Karen's hand hovered uselessly in the small space where her authority used to live. The clipboard felt suddenly light and ridiculous. The blazer looked like a costume. The queen bee had wandered into a hive that wasn't hers anymore. Michael stopped an arm's length from Sarah. He didn't reach, didn't intrude. He stood with his hands open at his sides, palms empty. The pool smell chlorine and coconut sunscreen folded into something older, something that lives in memory whether you invite it in or not. He swallowed, and when he finally managed words, they were barely more than a breath. But everyone heard them anyway, because silence had made room. "Ramadi," he said. Sarah's eyes flicked to him. It wasn't recognition yet. It was caution. Then curiosity. Then something like a tremor across still water. Karen tried one more time to steer the moment back into her lane. "Sir, please step away. We'll handle this." Michael didn't look at her. He didn't need to. The moment had already shifted, and even she felt it. He kept his gaze on Sarah, steady, level, the way you look at a lifeline you didn't expect to see again. The way you look at someone whose story got mangled by other people's mouths and who might finally get to tell it herself. The deck didn't move. The sun didn't blink. The pool didn't ripple. But the neighborhood changed right there, before a single meeting, before a single vote, before any statement from the board. It changed because a bully grabbed a sleeve and found a history she didn't have the tools to handle, and because a quiet man decided he wasn't going to let that history be twisted one more time. By Tuesday night, a sleeve had turned into a summons. The HOA blasted a special compliance hearing across Facebook and Nextdoor like it was a hurricane warning, and every bored neighbor within 3 blocks marked themselves interested. You ever seen a community center fill up just to watch one woman be shamed? Yeah, pull up a chair. They packed the room with folding chairs, lukewarm water jugs, and a little sign that said "Public Comment 2 minutes." Fluorescent lights hummed. A property manager in a navy polo stacked violation forms like playing cards. At the front sat the board, 5 faces in matching neutral expressions. And in the middle, like a wedding cake topper with teeth, was Karen Whitfield with her clipboard, her linen blazer, and the smile she wears for photos where she wants to look kind. Michael Kelly got there early and took a seat 3 rows back by the aisle. He didn't look at his phone. He looked at the door. In his wallet, the old photo pressed against the leather like it wanted air. He'd told himself he wouldn't jump the gun, wouldn't make it about him, wouldn't blow up the meeting. He would verify, be sure, and then, if he was right, he'd stand where it counted. Sarah walked in alone. Same canvas tote, same long sleeves. She didn't scan like prey. She scanned like a medic in a crowded tent, knowing exactly where the exits and the oxygen are before the first shout. People who'd never spoken to her whispered like they were at a concert and the headliner just arrived. You could feel the audience lean toward conflict. Don't lie, you know that lean. Drop me a comment if you've watched your HOA salivate like that. Karen tapped the mic. Good evening, neighbors. Let's all breathe. This is about safety and standards, not punishment. When people open with not punishment, grab your wallet. She read the agenda like a prayer. Item 1, pool attire and community comfort. Item 2, disruptive behavior at shared facilities. Item 3, a concern raised by multiple residents regarding potentially inflammatory imagery. She didn't say scars. She didn't say tattoo. She floated phrases that sound reasonable until they're weaponized. Miss Miller, she said, all sugary official, would you please come forward? Sarah didn't fidget, didn't glance at a friend for courage. She stood and walked the aisle like she owned her own spine and no one else did. She stopped just out of reach of the table. Thank you. Karen arranged her papers, a ritual of power. We've received several reports about attire choices at the pool and the impact on families with small children. While we remain compassionate to personal circumstances, our priority is maintaining a welcoming environment. How does a sleeve threaten a pool? Sarah asked. It's not just sleeves, Karen said, voice syrup slow. It's the overall effect. There were also concerns, she peeped at her papers, about visible markings that could be disturbing. Scars, Sarah said for her. The word didn't crack. It just landed. A few neighbors shifted like their seat cushions got smaller. The property manager cleared his throat as if he could cough the moment into something tidy. We also want to be clear, Karen continued, that our guidelines mention tattoos of a graphic or intimidating nature. Several residents reported seeing a very large military-type tattoo. We respect service, of course, she added, the way folks say bless your heart right before they twist the knife, but impersonating service is a crime. We have to be careful about stolen valor scams in community spaces. There it was. She tossed crime on the table like a trump card and let it sit, soaking in the gasps. You could feel the algorithm spike in every live stream running in that room. Michael stared at the top edge of his wallet as if it could tell him whether to move. He counted his breath. He watched Sarah's shoulders, the way they stayed level, the way her hands didn't curl into fists. He knew what it costs to keep your body from telling your story before your mouth does. Sarah looked at the board, not at Karen. Is there a written rule that bans long sleeves on deck chairs? The board president, a man with great hair and poor courage, glanced at the property manager, who glanced at his binder, who glanced back at Karen like he'd forgotten how reading works. We defer to the compliance chair on practical interpretation. Of course you do, Sarah said, not unkindly. Then let's add practical facts. At the pool, Miss Whitfield attempted to take my personal property and then grabbed my sleeve. That's not compliance, that's contact. A low wave moved through the room. Not shock, exactly. Recognition. People saw it. Some of them liked it when it wasn't happening to them. That is a mischaracterization, Karen said quickly, smiling wider. I merely sought to inspect. You aren't security, Sarah said. You aren't a cop. You don't inspect bodies. The mic picked up someone's damn right from the back, and the board president scolded the room with a look that works on toddlers and no one else. Miss Miller, we understand this is emotional, Karen said, leaning toward sympathy like a cat stretching after a nap. We can avoid all of this if you'll just clarify. If your tattoo is authentic and your status is what you imply, we can, celebrate that as a community. If not, we cannot allow destabilizing false claims in shared spaces. I haven't claimed anything, Sarah said. I've asked for the rule. You've given me rumors. Karen flipped another page. When bullies lose the room, they start reading. We have statements here from parents who say their children were frightened by scars, Sarah said. Still even. Not by me. And the tattoo, Karen added. Soft voice, sharp teeth. A division insignia, very dramatic wording. There are websites that sell fake unit decals and patches. I won't name them here, but you can imagine. You're doing it now, a neighbor muttered. You just did. Karen kept smiling like nothing she said had an echo. In the interest of transparency and healing, Miss Miller, would you be willing to briefly show the design so we can verify whether it rises to the level of graphic and whether our policy applies? Just a quick look so the board isn't relying on hearsay. No, Sarah said. We don't do show and tell with people's skin, but it would settle matters, Karen pressed. Just a peek. 2 seconds. 2 seconds is still my body, Sarah said. The room split along that sentence. Half the neighbors felt something unclench in their chest. The other half stared at the floor and wished the meeting would end before they had to choose a side. Karen saw her moment slipping. She glanced at the phones on tripods, the faces in the back row who came for spectacle. She decided to feed them. Okay, then we note refusal to cooperate. For the record, she said, looking into a camera like it owed her money, we will pursue verification with appropriate authorities. Stolen valor hurts real veterans. Real veterans are sitting in this room, someone snapped. A cane thumped once on linoleum. Michael stood. Not fast, not loud, just vertical, like a verdict. He didn't ask the chair for permission, didn't check the agenda, didn't raise a hand. He stepped into the aisle. Karen clocked him, then decided he was useful. Sir, if you support Miss Miller, encourage her to be transparent, she said, inviting him onto her stage as if she owned the lights. We all want the truth. Michael's voice came out steady. Truth doesn't need to be forced. Do you know her? Karen asked, pouncing. Can you vouch for her service? He looked at Sarah. May I? He asked her, not Karen. Sarah's chin lifted half an inch. A permission. Or maybe just a dare to be careful. Michael reached into his wallet and took out the photo. The paper had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases were their own map. 4 soldiers stood in dust, the color of bread crust, arms thrown over each other's shoulders like they still believed time was on their side. No one in the room needed names to recognize youth. He didn't hold it up to the cameras. He held it where Sarah could look, if she wanted. July, he said quietly, 2006. Her eyes hit the image, bounced, came back, and didn't leave. For a heartbeat, the room disappeared, and it was just the two of them. And whatever didn't burn that year, Karen laughed an ugly, brittle sound. Sir, you could have printed that off the internet 10 minutes ago. Michael didn't look at her. You grabbed her sleeve at the pool, he said, still to Sarah, and a diamond flashed. He didn't say Rock of the Marne. He didn't mouth the unit motto. He didn't play collector of facts. He said the part that mattered. I saw Ramadi on your skin. Sarah's breath hitched once, like a gear slipping into place. Who are you? She asked, and it wasn't defensive. It was like she already knew the answer and was afraid of getting it. My name is Michael Kelly, he said, throat tight but voice clean. I was supposed to die in a fire you walked into. You could hear the electric flicker of the lights. That's how quiet it got." "No," Sarah said, and her hands shook for the first time. Just once, just enough to prove she wasn't made of stone. "They told me you didn't make it. In Germany, they said," she stopped, "because grief is a live wire, and you don't grab it with both hands in public." "I made it," he said, "because someone smashed a window that didn't want to break and wouldn't leave me when leaving made sense." Karen surged back into the scene like a bad segue. "This is extremely dramatic," she said, as if drama were the crime. "But we still have no proof. Anyone can rehearse names and dates." "If you really served, Miss Miller, produce documents. DD 214. Awards. Otherwise, this is disrespectful to actual heroes." The cane thumped again. "Watch your mouth," the old man said without standing. Sarah blinked hard and cleared her voice like she was choosing which part of herself to put in the air. "I'm not here to prove anything," she said. "I'm here because you called a hearing over a sleeve, over a pattern," Karen corrected. "Over a concerning effort to draw attention, potentially to solicit sympathy or free benefits by implying service. We have programs for veterans. We need to protect them from fraud." "You grabbed me," Sarah said. The patience burned clean away. "You said I was upsetting children. You hung the word crime over my head and smiled while you did it." Karen tried to smile some more, but smiles have a shelf life. "Let's de-escalate," she said tightly. "1 minute. One look. Show the design, and we'll know what we're dealing with." "Absolutely not," the property manager blurted, finally remembering liability exists. "There will be no requests for physical exposure. Let's keep this within policy." "Thank you," Sarah said to him, not breaking eye contact with Karen. So Karen switched her attack vector. "Paper." "Fine," she said, riffling a stack. "We have witness statements. We have a photo from Saturday at the pool." She lifted a glossy print, triumphant. "You can't see much, but you can make out the edges of a military-style emblem under her sleeve. The internet is full of counterfeits. Until we verify, we must assume this is performative." Michael stepped closer to the table, still in the aisle, still in his lane. "You think a woman invented burn tissue to audition for your sympathy?" he asked. The question didn't need an answer. "Please return to your seat," Karen snapped, the kindness cracking. "We will not be intimidated by outbursts." "This isn't an outburst," he said. "It's identification." And then the clock struck ugly. Karen, desperate to yank the moment back, reached across the table, papers, pen, that photo in a smooth, practiced motion that looked like efficiency and felt like entitlement. Her sleeve cuff clipped the edge of Sarah's, just a brush, a snag, the tiniest catch. It was nothing. It was everything. Fabric slid. The cuff rolled. Light hit ink. Everyone in that room saw history. Blue and white diamond, crossed rifles, the curve of letters you can't fake with a stencil if you've never carried the weight of what they mean. 3 RD Infantry Division Ramadi, 2006. Not a brand, not a dare, a name on a map most people couldn't place in a globe quiz. No one breathed. Even the phones forgot to move. Karen stared like it might disappear if she didn't blink. "That proves nothing," she said, a voice people use when the elevator drops. "Anyone could. Sergeant Sarah Miller," Michael said, finally lifting the photo just enough for the board to see the past and the present line up. "Combat medic, Ramadi, summer 06. Sarah looked at him like a door opening and a wound opening at the same time. "You were the gunner," she whispered. "Not a question. You were pinned. And you were there," he said. "In the fire. Saying my name like it could keep me on this side." A neighbor in the second row started crying silently, hands over her mouth. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God," like you only say it when you mean it. Karen flailed for law again, the way some people grab a floaty after they've already swallowed water. "We are not a courtroom," she announced, voice pitched too high. "We are a homeowners association. We cannot allow theatrics to hijack process. This is the process, the board president said softly, before he could stop himself. He looked at Sarah, then at the phones, then at his hands like he was wondering when they learned how to tremble. We called her here. We can at least listen. Listen to what? Karen shouted, composure finally slipping. A story? A sob story? I will not let this room be manipulated by facts? Michael asked. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. By the difference between humiliation and accountability? Sarah's sleeve stayed where it had fallen. She didn't hide the ink. She didn't apologize for the skin around it. She didn't perform pain so people would clap. She just stood there with her arm visible, a living rebuke to the idea that decency equals silence. Tell them, she said to Michael, without looking away from Karen. Tell them what you think you remember. Not the whole thing. Not the blaze and the roar and the metal and the choice. That would come when the room was ready to hear it, and right now the room was just learning how. Michael nodded once, like saluting a memory. I remember heat, he said. And a window that suddenly had a pair of hands in it, and a voice that kept saying, I've got you. The property manager dropped into his chair like his legs forgot him. The board president stared at the table. A dozen phones tilted, then lowered, not off, just down. Karen tried to stare the moment back into obedience. It didn't blink. Power shifted without a sound. Not because of a vote, not because of a motion or a second or a unanimous show of hands. Because truth made the room heavier than rules, and for the first time all week, the rules looked small. If you've ever watched a bully realize the crowd isn't with them anymore, you know the look. It's not fear, it's confusion. What changed? The lights are the same. The chairs are the same. The mic still squeals if you touch it wrong. The only thing that changed is that someone finally named the thing out loud and the room decided to listen. Resume the agenda, Karen said weakly. Like if she said the magic words, the spell would break. No one moved. The agenda sat there next to the clipboard and the photo, and the little cup of plastic pens that never write when you need them. The hearing had stopped being about a tire and started being about a line that got crossed, and who was going to drag it back where it belongs. And that's how a petty summons turned into a moment that wouldn't fit back into a rulebook, no matter how many times you rewrote subsection C. You want proof? Not paperwork, not a speech. Proof is heat, glass, and a name shouted through smoke. The room leaned in, and Michael gave it oxygen. He didn't pace, he didn't perform. He rolled his sleeves, set the photo on the table where the board could see it, and spoke like a man watering a grave he visits too often. We were coming back from a patrol, July heat that hurt your teeth. Third vehicle in the convoy put out a call about debris on the road. My truck hit it first. He tapped the photo with a finger that didn't quite stop shaking. IED turned 9,000 pounds into air. Driver gone in the bright. Thompson out cold, blood down his temple, breathing ragged. My door wouldn't open. Fuel line singing. You ever hear metal scream? It does when it heats. Then the ammo started cooking off. The fluorescent lights clicked once overhead. Michael's voice didn't. It gets small when you're dying. No grand soundtrack, just details. A sticker peeling on the dash. A watch face cracked into a smile. And then there were hands at the window. Not their first rodeo. A knife edge. A bang on the corner where the laminate's already weak. A voice, steady enough to fake calm. I've got you. She didn't even say my name right the first time. She said it again until she did. He looked up at Sarah. The room followed his gaze. She pulled me when I was too big to be pulled. And then she went back, because that's what medics do. They count lives, not odds. She put her body over mine when the second IED went. That's why I can talk, he said, simple as a weather report. That tattoo on her arm? That's not decoration. That's a map with ghosts on it. A woman in the second row sobbed into her sleeve, muffled and real. The property manager stopped pretending to shuffle papers and stared at the tabletop as if a decision might climb out of the wood grain and make itself. Karen swallowed hard enough that the mic caught it. "Mr. Kelly," she said, trying for procedural and getting petty, "this is very emotional. It does not validate military service. We still require documentation." "Call it what you want," Michael said, still facing the board. "I call it recognizing the difference between a neighbor and a target." The old man with the cane pointed the wood tip towards Sarah like a knighting sword. "You've got mine," he said. One sentence. Full freight. Phones that had been aimed high tilted down a little, not off, just less hungry. The board president cleared his throat, found his voice in the bottom of his water cup, and set it on the table like a symbol. "Miss Whitfield," he said, "careful. We are accountable for conduct, not bodies. Grabbing a resident is not policy. It's cause for a pause." Karen gripped the clipboard so hard the metal clip left little commas in her palm. "So we're just canceling standards? We're going to let intimidating marks. Intimidating to whom?" Sarah asked, and finally stepped closer to the mic. You could feel the room pivot toward the center of her gravity. Kids aren't born afraid of scars. They learn it. If you want a welcoming community, start by not calling a human being bad aesthetic. Start by not grabbing people to make your point. Karen aimed for righteous, landed on brittle. "We have programs for veterans," she said. "Actual veterans. People who follow procedure. People who do the work without making everything about them." Sarah didn't flinch. "The only thing I made was coffee this week. You made a hearing." A ripple of air moved through the rows like a breeze inside a room with no windows. The board president nodded once, to himself as much as anyone else. "Here's what we're doing," he said, finally acting like the gavel even if there wasn't one. "Effective immediately, any fines or warnings related to Miss Miller's sleeves are rescinded. We're instituting a freeze on attire-based enforcement until policy is clarified. The management company will review the compliance committee's conduct." Karen sat forward, hot with indignation. "You're punishing me for doing my job. We're pausing you," he said, firming. "Pending review." "Suspension," the property manager added, eyes on his laptop like it might shield him from blowback. "From chair duties, pending investigation." He typed fast. "I'll notify the management company." The murmurs didn't feel like gossip now. They felt like people relearning their knees. The message went out in minutes anyway, the way everything does, ping, buzz, banner across 100 screens. HOA announcement, interim suspension of compliance chair, conduct review initiated, pool attire policy under revision. The live stream stacked the text in their comments like dominoes. A neighbor whispered, "Check the Facebook group," and 100 thumbs obeyed. The post was up. The thread roared. Karen's smile came back. Too many teeth. "This is mob rule," she said. "You're letting social media dictate policy. Today it's sleeves. Tomorrow it's noise complaints. What do I tell the families who wrote statements? That intimidation wins? Tell them the rule is don't touch people," someone said. Someone else added, "Tell them scars aren't rude." A third voice, young and sharp, "Tell them my mom's a nurse, and she looks like that after a burn unit shift. Should she take the back gate too?" Karen turned her fire toward Michael. "That's what bullies do when their first target won't burn." "And you," she said. "If you're so sure, produce credentials, pull up a record. If she's real, make it real." "You want documents?" Michael said. "Fine." He kept his eyes on Sarah again, asking without asking. She gave a tiny nod, "Go as far as you have to, not an inch more." He took his phone out, scrolled past photos of dogs and grocery lists, and a text thread with a daughter that said, "Be safe, Dad," and opened an email folder he never shared. "Redacted discharge papers," he said, showing the board without letting the internet eat them. A line of text, a unit name, a date. Enough to satisfy a committee without turning a person into content. "My file mentions a medic who refused evacuation. No name. But I recognized the handwriting on the margin note." He swallowed. "I wasn't the only one she dragged." Karen's face didn't know whether to spit or cry. She chose fury. "Still hearsay!" she snapped, clinging to a word that used to be a raft and now looked like a pool noodle. Procedure, the property manager said, suddenly brave on the safe hill. We have enough to proceed with the conduct review. That's the scope tonight. Scope? Michael echoed, flat. Good word. Keep it on the grabbing, not on her arm. The board president leaned into the mic. There will be no requests for residents to expose tattoos or scars for any purpose. That's not who we are. A slow clap started in the back, died because this wasn't a movie, then rose again, not as applause, but as a dozen soft taps of rings on chair backs. Not celebration, agreement. Karen went wide with her target. Fine, she said, jaw hard. Then let's talk disruption. She escalated at the pool. No, Sarah said, and the steel came out. You did. You used the word crime. You said I upset children. You took my name to Facebook without my consent and invited this circus. You turned a sleeve into a summons and a rumor into a verdict. You wanted a stage? She gestured to the rows, the phones, the board. This is what stages do. They tell the truth about who needs an audience. The old man's cane thumped approval. Two teens in the back put their phones down on their knees, eyes up. The property manager typed a new note. Adopt code of conduct. Prohibit public shaming. Require board approval before posting resident names. The door opened. Two community security officers stepped in. Not dramatic, just present. They took positions by the wall like lampposts. The board president didn't milk it. We've asked security to be here because feelings are high, he said. No one leaves shamed. No one leaves touched. We will take statements privately after we adjourn. Karen bristled like the word privately offended her. So I'm the villain now, she said, for asking questions. You're the villain for grabbing, a woman said gently. Questions are free. Hands are not. A notification chime rolled through the room like a tiny bell choir. Someone gasped. The management company posted, a neighbor reported in the stunned voice people save for weather alerts. They're launching an independent review, they wrote. We honor veterans and all residents. No tolerance for harassment. Karen stared at her phone as if it had betrayed her. Thread after thread bloomed. Screenshots of Saturday's pool confrontation multiplied, each angle more unflattering. One clip, clean audio, caught the moment she said, we just need to see what's under there. The comment section did not forgive. Michael didn't look satisfied. He looked tired, which is different. He drifted one step closer to Sarah like a tide. You don't have to say anything else, he said low. You didn't then. You don't now. She shook her head once. I'm done being narrated, she said, not unkind. Then she turned to the board. Here's my ask. Not a banner, not a parade. Fix your policy. Put it in writing. No body policing, no medical shaming, no public allegations of crimes you made up to win an argument. Train your volunteers. If you need someone to help write it, I've written field protocols in worse rooms. The board president nodded fast, grateful for a to-do list that sounded like a way out. Yes, he said. We will motion, the old man grunted, and half the room laughed because it felt good and not cruel. The property manager wrote faster. Karen clutched at the last thread. So, that's it? We just forget the parents? We act like children weren't scared? Sarah finally looked at her, nothing in her expression approximating hate. If your child was scared, bring them to the pool. Let them ask. I'll answer. I don't bite, Scars explained. They don't demand. You wanted me to roll my sleeves. I'm rolling the story instead. That's how communities get less small. A mom in the third row raised a hand halfway, then forgot to wait. My kids can meet you, she blurted, cheeks pink. They ask everything. You'll be sick of us. I'm sorry. I'm hard to scare, Sarah said, and the line landed like a smile even though her mouth barely moved. Karen sat back, blazer suddenly too heavy for July. She looked like a person learning, very slowly, that control and respect are not synonyms. Her phone buzzed again. A name flashed. Not her friend. Not a fan. The management company rep. She didn't answer. Michael slid the photo closer to the edge of the table. The board president reached out, careful, like it might burn him, and looked. He didn't post it. He didn't scan it. He set it down again, like a borrowed thing you don't want to damage. "Thank you," he said, not to Michael only, to the room for holding this without chewing it into content, to Sarah for not letting them off easy, to himself for not hiding behind a binder when it mattered. The meeting didn't bang a gavel, it exhaled. People stood without scraping chairs too loud, like noise might break something newly intact. Security stayed by the wall, useless in the best way. The board president read the words he'd typed a minute earlier and believed them while he said them. "We're adjourned," he murmured. "We'll communicate policy changes within 30 days. Neighbors didn't bolt for the door. They drifted towards Sarah in 2s and 3s, palms open, not for touching, just for the shape of a greeting. "I'm sorry," one said. "Thank you," said another. "I didn't know," said a third, and the honesty of it was its own kind of offering. Karen gathered her clipboard, papers askew, crown slipping. She wasn't frog-marched. She wasn't booed. That would have been easy. She walked out between two lines of people who didn't look away and didn't clap and didn't gossip out loud. That's worse if you're used to noise. Silence has edges. Michael turned to Sarah and didn't reach. She didn't either. They didn't need to. The space between them wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied by something that didn't burn. 17, he said, voice gone thick for the first time. "That number's right, isn't it?" "Somewhere around there," she said. "Numbers are bad at grief." "We should get coffee sometime," he said, and then laughed at himself because she'd been serving coffee for 3 years to people who didn't deserve it. "Not at the pool. Clubhouse," she said. "If they'll have me." A chorus of "we will" rolled up behind her without anyone coordinating it. It sounded like a neighborhood deciding who it wants to be. In the hallway, phones kept buzzing. Posts kept stacking. A statement from the management company landed clean and lawyered. "We are reviewing committee conduct. We affirm every resident's right to enjoy amenities, free from harassment and bodily intrusion. We will update policies to prohibit public shaming and to honor veterans and survivors." Comment shut off. Share stayed on. Good. Let it spread with fewer fights. Inside the room, the board shuffled papers into folders labeled OLD, business, and new business, and never, ever labeled lives. The old man with the cane stood without help and nodded once at Sarah, like he was handing a torch and she was handing it back. A teenage lifeguard in a polo he hadn't ironed said, "Ma'am, if you want, I can walk you to your car." She said, "I'm good," and meant it. If you've ever watched a bully lose their echo, you know that quiet that follows. It's not peace yet. It's something like ground. You can build on that if you keep showing up. You can write policy on that if you remember who it's for. You can heal on that if the people who did the harm learn how to say the hardest word without choking on it. The word is sorry. The work is longer. The room, finally, was ready for both. 6 months later, the loudest message in our neighborhood wasn't on Facebook. It was on the clubhouse wall. Don't touch people. No body policing. No public shaming. Next to it, an AED, a Stop the Bleed kit Sarah helped install, and a small photo of her in uniform beside another in a short-sleeve HOA tee. Kids asked about scars like they ask about rain. Sarah answered plain, "Fire, I healed." Dignity did the rest. Policy grew a spine. The board banned touching, medical speculation, and posting residents' names or photos without consent. Complaints moved to a real form, not a rumor thread. Investigations were private and time-boxed. Volunteers trained on bias and de-escalation. Old badges got re-upped or retired. The property manager finally acted like one. Meetings started on time, mics stopped being weapons, and the phrase, "we're here to solve, not perform," became standard. Sarah didn't vanish. She wore sleeves when she wanted, didn't when she didn't, and launched Neighbors Watch Out for Neighbors, practical nights on go bags, smoke alarms, and bleeding control. The old man with the cane set up chairs. A teen lifeguard learned tourniquets on pool noodles. Michael showed up quietly, printed policies in readable fonts, and told jumpy parents that bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's what you do after. Online drama cooled. Moderators pinned 3 rules: no doxing, no medical gossip, use the forum, and threads burned shorter. When someone called a wheelchair ramp an eyesore, 5 neighbors replied with the policy, then painted the ramp to match the trim. That's what change looks like: less noise, more work. Then Karen returned. No blazer, no entourage, a volunteer badge, rougher hands, an envelope. 4 months at the Veterans Center, she said. 5,000 raised, I grabbed your sleeve, I used crime to win. I was wrong. No theatrics, just the words. Sarah took the envelope, locked it up, and gave her the only test that matters. Tuesdays need drivers. Paperwork needs someone who doesn't make people feel small. Keep showing up. Karen nodded, like a person who finally understood the difference between control and service. The management company's final report landed. Her suspension became removal, mandatory training for leads, a grievance path that bypasses personalities. It ended with a line rare in corporate email: "We did harm, we will do better." Spring came back. The pool reopened. The rule on the wall stopped looking brave and started looking obvious. Michael and Sarah drank bad clubhouse coffee because tradition watched kids cannonball and let quiet be the closing argument. No neat credits. Just a neighborhood with better reflexes. Before you reach, ask. Before you accuse, check. Before you post, breathe. If your HOA wants the shortcut, steal ours. Keep your hands to yourself. Ask better questions. Keep showing up. That's how a place stops rewarding petty power and starts honoring people who walked through fire and came back anyway.